Everyone, welcome back to FPL Fran. Today's video is going to be my match day 3 team selection for the Club World Cup. We're quite deep into the tournament now. I think we've had a lot of games. I've been able to share some of my insights just watching, I would say 85% of the matches so far. Only missed a few, some of those sort of 2 a.m., 3 a.m. type games that unfortunately I've even tried to watch, but at times it's hard to do with work and everything. But as I kind of said in match day 2, I think, the general themes of the tournament so far is that these Brazilian teams have been pretty impressive. I would say some of the recent results, like let's say the most recent match with Ulsan, maybe not so impressive, but Fluminense also rotated a lot. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Otherwise, I think, of course, we've seen some of the European teams have an extremely slow start. And I suppose the judge of that is just going to be how they perform with their strongest squads when we go into the playoffs. But as we head in towards match day 3, I think the biggest themes is, we've always known that there's going to be tough matches for match day 3. So Bayern's versus Benfica, City's versus Juve. A lot of people aren't going to own any players from these teams. And that's kind of why I also wildcarded in match day 2 into a lot of the players who don't play for these teams. And I feel like my team's actually very strong. I actually finished match day 2. Well, actually, I'm recording this video right now before the final culminating day of match day 2 is over. So I still have Haaland and Fran Garcia to play. So we'll see. Hopefully Fran Garcia does well. He actually is sub 5% owned, so there's a high chance that he can do something and get me some scouting bonus. Scouting bonus, as I've mentioned, even from the start of the tournament, it's just an amazing thing, right? Just the opportunity to get so much points from it is very, very clear, especially even from a defender's point of view. I mean, once you get a clean sheet, getting 9 points from a defender is just absolutely ludicrous. And a lot of people have accessed that. Unfortunately for myself, I think my defense has been a complete flop for this round. So I'm currently on 81 points in this round with a total of 183 points. The rank is, as I said, 388 in the world, which is quite nice. I actually moved over to a John Arias captaincy from a Pavlidis captaincy, just because I was tempted, because I felt like my final boss was going to be Haaland. I'm probably going to stick the John Arias captaincy. I just think Haaland has to almost score two like a brace plus, which is reasonable, I think, versus Alain, but not realistic, I would say, for me to risk it. So that's kind of where I'm at. I have 2 transfers. There's an option to go max captaincy, but I plan to play this tournament up until the end, and I think there's just better opportunities of max captaincy up until the very, very end. I've even walked through what my provisional team would be on match day 3. I should have 6 goes at captaincy. There's actually 8 fixture windows, so weather delays are a problem, and maybe that actually gets rid of some of these sort of potential rotations in terms of captaincy. But for the most part, you're expected to have 8 rolls of the dice here. You have 15 players. So I guess the Kane Elise situation is a good example of how max captaincy can hurt you, right? You can captain someone who has an amazing game on paper like Kane, but Elise can get 19 points. On the flip side, though, I'd say, even, for example, as someone who didn't captain Elise for stupid reasons and stupid reasons alone, I was in a movie theater, was feeling spicy, went for Rafa Guerrero for whatever reason, because I kind of felt like his ownership would be the lowest, but I also think realistically he was probably the closest towards top options like Kane and Elise, as I had Kane 12th man and couldn't captain him. It didn't work out. So, but at the end, I was still able to claim 15 points from Kolo Muani, which obviously was fortunate, but I also had around, 8 rolls of the dice to get there. So that's all I'm trying to say in terms of the more dices that we roll, the less it kind of matters what the expected points of players are, because we know that it's very realistic for people to hit that sort of threshold of 9 points from whatever position. On top of that, too, I think when you look at, let's say, when you have that many rolls of dice, you know that someone hopefully is going to hit that sort of upper threshold, right? We have expected points very often for a lot of players. It's somewhere spanning, especially in a game like this where you get additional points for goal scoring actions, for clean sheets. I'd say probably the average expectation is somewhere between 5 points minimum to around 13 at times if you get to play Auckland as an attacker. So you can kind of see that the expectations for captaincy are quite high in this game, and I think it is not advisable for me to go max captain in match day 3. So as I said, with match day 2, we'll see how the rest of the games go. Plan to bring in Haaland Garcia in, but what do I do for match day 3? When I look at my team and I look at the match day 3 fixtures that are on paper, clearly the team that has the best game on paper once again is the team playing versus Auckland City. And interestingly, Benfica and Bayern, their goal deficit will have a direct impact on what I guess Boca's goal deficit has to be. because Boca has already drawn with Benfica, so they need to almost outscore what Benfica did to Auckland City, but at the same time, they can rely on Bayern doing well. So Boca were, I think, quite fortunate to keep that Bayern scoreline rather low. 2-1 and a goal deficit of -1 for that game actually means that there's a lot of pressure put on Benfica to, I think, keep the scoreline low and then almost force Boca to outscore them in that kind of context. Now, of course, Bayern could rotate a little bit. Company actually talked about this, and I think he makes a fair point. Bayern have really, really strong depth, but we obviously seen that there are some tier 1 players in that team. So, you know, when you take away someone like Kane or Elise, and Musiala might not even feature in match day 3 due to the not a re-injury, sorry, but just another injury occurring for him, then of course you know that the team anyways for Bayern is going to be a lot weaker for Benfica, which is obviously a plus that kind of heads towards Benfica's favor. Benfica do also have Carrera suspended, so I think that allows for a lot of players like Di Maria and Actoglu to actually start again. But when I look at my team, I think the easiest way to sort of move forward to 2 free transfers is to go into triple Boca. I already have 1 Boca goalkeeper or Boca player in Marquesan, so what I'll probably be looking at is trying to go for Merentiel from Boca Juniors. We know Cavani's still struggling with the injury. If you didn't see the goal versus Bayern Munich, it was basically a solo goal from the halfway line, almost, from Merentiel, which was absolutely beautiful. And I think then it's a case of whether you want to go for a Boca Juniors defender or, you know, in my case, I've got Benfica players against Bayern. It probably makes sense for me to get rid of as much of them as possible. So when I look at my team, maybe Di Maria or Actoglu is worth keeping. Pavlidis almost has to go for Merentiel because I think his minutes are the safest and he probably has the most goal threat versus Auckland. Yes, of course, a lot of goals have been scored on the right-hand side versus Auckland, but I also have to mention that, you know, Pavlidis has had plenty of chances. Muller had plenty of chances. Kane didn't score, but, you know, as I said, Muller within that 30 minutes was able to do a lot, and a lot of people playing within central positions have done well. For example, the right back coming in the second half for Benfica, Govera, I hope I'm not butchering his name, but he was also able to score 2 goals. And so, yes, okay, maybe there's a genuine weakness on the right, but when you look at Di Maria as well, I mean, he also just took his penalties, right? Yes, of course, he drew one of them, but I don't think that it's so clear-cut that you need to ignore the forwards. I think any forward playing versus Auckland City is just going to have inherent value, and that means if you're looking at targeting options on the right, I think Zenon's there as a midfielder, and then Advincula is there as a right back for Boca Juniors. So I am actually personally planning to sell Di Maria probably to go for Zenon. Part of this is because Actoglu is going to drop below 5%. And yes, he's been absolutely awful in the tournament. And yes, secondly, he's also not on penalties, which I don't really expect to happen versus Bayern anyways. But I'm kind of hoping that I can get some jam from something that can happen from Actoglu, a bank on the sort of 5-point scouting bonus, and call it a bit of a day. We'll see, of course, because there's a potential for us to sort of get Benfica's starting lineups. I think Bola was a Portuguese newspaper that I was actually reading into, and they actually got the lineup for Benfica versus Auckland City perfectly right. So I'm hoping to get some insights from some of my, you know, in the know Portuguese friends, and maybe they can give a bit more insight than myself, because I do think initially probably the plan was to not play Di Maria versus Bayern, and I think maybe that still is the plan, given that he actually played the full match versus Auckland City, and, you know, at his age, I suppose it's quite a big ask for him to play and start 3 matches in a row. But equally, as I said, if Carreras is gone and they play a back 5, then there's a lot of scope for Di Maria to play, because I guess his only competition at that point is someone like Shutterup and Bruma, which means, I mean, Bruma's also quite an aged player. I don't think he necessarily helps the sort of Benfica defense, but Shutterup as well, I don't think is necessarily trusted by Bruno Lage. So I think I'd still probably tap myself with the differential, but I think Di Maria is probably the best decision. And I think this tournament so far, I've made a few vibesy decisions. Xavier was the pick that I actually went for in match day 2, and he didn't even start. I did see actually when I was looking at the Fluminense minutes that Xavier actually played more minutes than the other fullback, but of course Fluminense chose to go with full rotation. I think he definitely starts in match day 3, so I'm not so worried about that. But I probably made choices in terms of going for players that I think their minutes have been poor, and Barcola is like a shining example of that, where I gone for him in match day 1 and 2, and, you know, surely at this point 3rd time's the charm. So I'll wait for the PSG lineups as well, but I guess there's also scope and potential for me to do a -3 there to sort of remove Barcola if he doesn't actually start that match, and potentially even move him towards maybe even someone like Dembele, especially since I'll have some cash remaining moving into some Boca Juniors players. So that's kind of the logic in terms of the team selection. I also wanted to share some of the sort of match day level data as well from my friend Schadenfreudist. He is someone who's been sort of collating a lot of the market odds data, and he's been sharing them with us, throughout the tournament. The expected goals, very interestingly, for a team like Boca Juniors is almost double of any other team in this tournament. So you can already sell that. In my opinion, if you have 0 Boca Juniors players and you've already used your wild card, I would use all 3 transfers. I would take a hit for a Boca Juniors player. That whenever you have an expected goal tally of something like 6, which I've honestly never seen before up until this tournament, you're basically saying that most of the players who are in attacking positions, in that front 3, front 4 for whatever teams against Auckland City is basically guaranteed at least a goal or assist, which, especially coupled with a scouting bonus, in this case for Boca Juniors, just means that they're hauling. And there's a massive guarantee of that. So, in my opinion, I think you have to go triple Boca first, and then you can reconsider the other team. So, high above on these lists, you can see the clean sheet Chelsea odds are extremely high. I think the advantage of anyone going for a wild card at this point in time is definitely to go for a little bit of a stronger Chelsea defense, because Chelsea defensive ownership outside of Cucurella is actually very, very cheap. On the flip side, I think Dortmund is once again still quite cheap, although we saw an absolutely dismal performance versus the Sundowns. And I have to say, I was really unimpressed with Dortmund. I think they actually didn't even deserve to win that game, but they did. And I'm happy that Girassi got some shots on targets and scored. But still, the game is an easier game on paper. Ulsan lost one of their key attackers in the game versus Fluminense, and at the same time, I just think Dortmund's goal scoring expectations are exceedingly high. So someone like Girassi feels like a very solid option. With PSG, I think Hakimi is very hard to avoid, and given that someone like Nuno Mendes is someone who's also above 5% ownership, there's no real reason to pick, I suppose, the inferior attacking option on an average expectation. When I think about the PSG attack, I think there's different options to go there, right? Vitinha's minutes are most likely nailed. He's also on penalties, as long as, Dembele doesn't have a little bit of a say in that if he comes on the pitch as well. But that's there for Vitinha. Kvaratskhelia minutes have always been extremely strong. Doué is up there as well as a pick, especially as he's a bit cheaper than someone like Dembele. I personally don't think Dembele is going to start. I think Luis Enrique has always been quite cautious with players coming back from injury, and I probably should have learned that lesson from Barcola. I just thought that, listening or reading into some French journalists sort of discussing that Barcola was actually training before the Atleti game, I kind of felt like that was enough time for him to actually start versus Botafogo, but that wasn't the case, and so I'll have to take that on the chin. Fluminense and Flamengo are extremely high in terms of the odds here, so you can kind of see that there's a lot of specific fixtures you want to target. I think with Flamengo, we've already seen that De Arrascaeta makes a lot of sense as a pick. He was subbed off very early versus Chelsea, and actually there's some other picks like Bruno Henrique who played exceedingly well, and so he's most likely going to start, in my opinion, match day 3, where I would say Flamengo are still going to be, pushed to want to win that game anyways. As far as, let's say, a little bit across the board, I think there are some interesting differentials across some teams. The only sort of players that I think I'd make a mention to is, once again, maybe some Atleti players, if you still see some of them are below 5% ownership. So, for example, someone like Lenormand, who I believe is still below 5%. And then in Monterrey, of course, you still have Sergio Ramos. I don't know whether or not he's going to be available for match day 3 at the time of recording this video, but he's an interesting pick. With Porto too, I mean, they're pretty high in terms of the expected goals as well. And they actually have on paper another good game, seeing that they're not facing off versus Inter Milan and Palmeiras. They actually get to face off versus a team that I think probably came into this tournament with slightly higher expectations, like Al Ahly, but unfortunately they've not done very well. So that's an opportunity as well. But that's it. I think, once again, it feels like quite a simple game week for someone like myself in my position, where I just have to make 2 transfers, maybe even take a hit if I really want to, but I'm going for a triple Boca, and I already have 1. Whereas other people, I think, when you're looking at a wild card and what would be drastically different from my team, I mean, clearly no Benfica players, more Chelsea players, maybe triple Dortmund, including someone like a Julian Brandt. His minutes aren't the best, but he's probably going to start that game, and I think he's going to play 60 minutes at least. And if he's below 5% ownership, then you get a scouting bonus. If not, I'd probably ignore him. With Al Hilal, you've got Salem Al-Dawsari, and I think he's very, very good. Renan Lodi as well has been very, very attacking this tournament, and offside goal versus Real Madrid. But just generally, you can see that there's an onus for him to sort of go in the overlap and create a lot of chances. So I think these are the types of picks that are probably the ones that I'd lean towards if I'm thinking about a wild card and thinking about what sort of players that would interest me as I craft my team. And that's pretty much it. So as far as my own team, as I said, it's going to be quite simple, quite standard. I am basically planning to play Marquesin as my starting goalkeeper, and then I'm going to fill the rest of the team with Hakimi, Anton, Piquerez, and Samuel Xavier, and then Fran Garcia as the sort of final defender. In the midfield, I will be fielding Kvaratskhelia, Di Maria or Aktakoglu, I haven't really decided, but I think I'll keep Aktakoglu, you know, for the purpose of this video. And you know, I love my sub 5%. I think this is a tournament where you're okay to have fun, and the scouting bonus rule sort of allows for that, right? So, you know, has it been fun so far owning Aktakoglu? If you owned Aktakoglu over Di Maria, absolutely not, because Di Maria has scored a lot of points, and I guess Aktakoglu's done absolutely nothing. But my average expectations, I think, aren't that Di Maria is 3-4 times the player Aktakoglu is, because he scored 3 penalties, right? It's quite clear that Aktakoglu still has some value. So I think he's probably the player that I'll keep. Arias is staying in the team for sure. A great free kick goal as well. Barcola, if he starts, will be here. If not, I think I might have to just take a hit for Barcola, because I just think there's an opportunity to just move into someone like Doué, who's just going to start versus Seattle Sounders, and I shouldn't be stupid about this. I'm going to take the hit no matter what if Barcola doesn't start, but I really hope he does. And I really think he should, because Goncalo Ramos has not been impressive in this tournament so far. So the only reason I think why Barcola hasn't been playing is because Luis Enrique is cautious. So why am I so confident that Barcola should be starting if he's fit? I look at a game like Arsenal, for example, in the Champions League, one of the most important games that PSG has played this season, where Dembele was actually starting on the bench. Barcola starts over Goncalo Ramos. So I will have to take that expectation going forward still, and hope that Barcola, third time lucky, does something for me. But the fifth sort of midfielder is going to be Zenon from Boca Juniors. His minutes in versus Bayern weren't great, but I think in a match here that's a little bit more relaxed, hopefully he gets to play, and maybe as the sort of first choice player within this Boca Juniors team, I'm hoping that he'll just be able to play sufficiently long enough to actually get the returns that we want versus this Auckland team. I do think it's actually interesting to actually go triple Boca in terms of maybe going 2 defenders as well, because the minutes of the attackers from a team like Boca are much more rotated or hard to guess and predict from than, let's say, previously like a team like Benfica or even a team like Bayern. I say where Bayern obviously could have got the job done in 45 minutes, if that makes sense. Whereas obviously Benfica and Boca Juniors are slightly inferior teams. You actually still want some more minutes from those players, and you want to kind of nail those minutes down. But most likely the attackers are where you want to go for it, because at the end of the day, when you think about, let's say, the clean sheet odds, yes, they're extremely high versus Auckland. But unless that defender as well also gets an attacking return, that ceiling is almost 9. Whereas honestly, for these attackers, I mean, 1-2 attacking returns and you're already deep into the double digits. So that's why I would prefer going for double attackers in this situation. Lidis also leaves the team so that I can actually bring in Merentiel, and then Guirassy is going to partner up with Holland to sort of round out the team. In terms of the actual order, it's just going to be based on fixtures. The final fixture day, or final 2 fixture days, is going to be Holland and Garcia, so they definitely go into my bench, Garcia being Fran Garcia. As far as, let's say, that last player, I believe that sort of 25th of June block actually includes the Dortmund and Fluminense games at the same time. So, I mean, I'm going to bench preemptively, I guess, someone like maybe Xavier for now, but it doesn't really matter. I'll just have to change and sub players around as soon as I get my first blank, and then Xavier will come in at some point in time, hopefully as long as he starts and I don't have to keep him on the bench. And that's pretty much it. That's going to be the team selection for this game week. Thank you guys so much for watching. I look forward to doing some more content for these videos. It's most likely going to be team selections from here on out, but I think I will take some time to kind of go through the sort of match day odds like I did, for example, in the middle of this video, and kind of discuss who I think are the best types of picks to target from certain teams going forwards. And that's pretty much it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope to see you guys soon. Take care and goodbye. I hope you guys are doing well this tournament.